finds a way to the minister's message, whether we want to or not. And this week in particular, just because Sunday falls on the 8th, I didn't have this like conscious recognition of the fact that when I started my week last week that I would be speaking, and as I had all of this discomfort, I was like, oh, and realized that I was speaking. I went and pulled up the theme and I said, well, no wonder this week has been so difficult. And once I got that clarity, once I knew what the theme was, it wasn't a conscious invitation to find the discomfort or find the comfort in discomfort, and it really shifted my week. So I'm grateful to have had that experience and grateful to share that with you all today, even though I'm not going to get into my week specifically. I was reminded of this personal philosophy that I've lived for a few years now. So I want to ask, do you all know what day today is?
The best day ever.
Right? So the people in the room who know that I live from this philosophy know that about 5 years ago, I was inspired to live each day as the best day ever. And it started by someone in my life saying, hey, do you know what day it is? And I never knew. But eventually, I put together that it was the best day ever. And at that point in my life, my life was not going the way that I wanted to. And so having a life that my home life was fine, but I had moved to Los Angeles and wanted to work in television and was not finding that success. And at that time, I believe I was working in reality TV, and I am not a reality TV person at all. So it was kind of my worst nightmare to be working in reality TV, but the job that I was working for was the production company that produced Undercover Boss, that they had a brand of producing aspirational unscripted television, and I had this feeling of, if I have to work in unscripted, this is the company that I want to work for. They also happened to be the closest production company to the place I was living at the time. So that was all going very well, but I was still in unscripted and trying to make the jump from reality TV to scripted television. I was just frustrated that it had been years, and I felt like I hadn't gotten just any closer to it. And really, it didn't happen overnight. Living each day is the best day ever. I didn't experience something that felt like the best day ever for a very long time. But what it did do is allow me to take my attention off of what wasn't working for me and what I didn't like about my life, and really lean into gratitude, truly live from a place of gratitude. Ernest Holmes said, "The world has learned all it should through suffering." This was the name of a chapter in the Science of Mind. And when I think about something like discomfort, suffering and discomfort are not at all the same things. So there is a lot of beauty and clarity and healing to be mined from the experience of darkness. But we don't actually have to suffer. Suffering is allowing that darkness to really take hold, to dig a hole and sit in it deeper and stay there. Where discomfort is very different, right? It's just, I'm in a situation that I don't like. It may be physically uncomfortable, it may be emotionally uncomfortable, but that it's not an experience of actually suffering. You don't have to live from suffering. And what the Science of Mind is all about is recognizing the beauty of living from a place of gratitude, of not only knowing that energy of gratitude changes our life, it changes our life because it changes our perspective. Because we're looking at what is working instead of what is not. We get to walk through the world with a more positive attitude. We get to step on stages and say, what day is it? Other people know that it's the best day ever. That it just creates a shift in the world around us, regardless of the actual events in our lives and how long it takes to manifest the things that we are working to manifest. So this morning, as I was hit with the realization that I wanted to talk about this experience of the best day ever, and even though I talk about it and think about it, in the last 2.5 years or so since I've lived in Oklahoma City, it hasn't really been a central force and figure for me, just because it was such a central idea in my life in Los Angeles that in Oklahoma, Oklahoma for me has been about authenticity. Oklahoma has been the place where I can truly feel like myself. United Life specifically is one of the reasons why I feel this way. I've been able to stand up here and say whatever I want, and no one has come for me, which makes me feel very good. And it's given me just the space and the freedom, and it's every space that I've been in Oklahoma City, I feel celebrated. And that's what people always say you want. A life well lived is a life where you're not just tolerated, you are celebrated. And I feel celebrated in literally every space that I'm in. So the challenges that I experience have been more about healing of trauma. That's really what's been happening. Having the safe space to be who I am and express myself authentically means that I've been safe to really look at things that I've been either unwilling to look at or maybe have never been exposed to before I moved to Oklahoma. And so it's really up-leveled my own understanding of who I am and also given me some education and some experience in being able to support others in areas that I didn't have experience in supporting them before. So as I was sitting with this realization, and every year, around the end of the year, I've been thinking about really leaning into this best day ever theme more so because I like to start January 1st with saying, hey, this is a thing that we all get to do together. And that really came about in January of 2021, before I moved here. So January of 2021, I was married to someone else, and I never really talked about, I have only talked about this in really intimate settings, in intimate spaces, that the person that I was married to and I made several attempts to conceive. So I went through fertility services and it just didn't work. Tried different things, and around the time that I left, I had this feeling of I would have never left this marriage if we had ever produced a child, and this marriage was not the right one for me. So I got to see the blessing in that. But in January of 2021, after the whole 2020 situation, and Los Angeles was one of those places that was shut all the way down. So January 2021 was still a kind of shutdown situation of some sorts. And the person that I was with, not only did we have challenges with really only seeing each other for a full year, but also the conversation about race had a significant impact on our lives. I am mixed race, she is black, and we just had some very intense challenges, especially because the white members of my family said some very uncomfortable things during that time. And so we did a lot of healing work, and we're really leaning into this idea of the best day ever. And in November of 2020, one of the fertility companies, the one that we had worked with most recently, called and said, hey, we have this embryo from 2 years ago that you never used. And we're like, what are you talking about? How could you possibly have an embryo that we don't know about? This does not make any sense. And they said, well, we called you and told you that it wasn't growing, and you never called us back, but then it ended up still growing, and so we just have it and froze it, and it's our bad. We should have told you, but we've had it for 2 years now. And I called them because they were sending us bills, and we're like, why are you sending us bills all of a sudden? What is this for? And they're like, it's for this embryo that you didn't know you had. Our bad, all around, our bad. So in November of 2020, I was living in what Los Angeles is called the Valley, and this fertility services provider is in Beverly Hills. So in 2 years before, if it had not been 2020, going from the Valley to Beverly Hills several times a week would have taken me 3 hours one way. But because it was the pandemic and everything was shut down, it took 20 minutes. And so the realization that time and life had made it so that it would be very easy for us to do this work, to go to the provider, made this, and it was a 2-year-old embryo, so the idea of it is it's a younger embryo. We've given up, and so this felt like the moment that things were changing. And so we just prayed on it, stayed present with it, did all of the things to prepare for it, and the day that I was set to get this embryo transplanted, the lab called and said, we don't have an we never had an embryo. We are so sorry. So I was like, this whole thing is not cool. Like this has to be a lawsuit. Not only did I spend all of this money, take all of these drugs in preparation for this embryo transfer, like, the whole thing, it's been a 2-year thing. I didn't reach out to them. They called me with this information that they did not fix and clarify on their end, and this is not cool. It's not okay. So I called a lawyer right away, and still in the process. Like, I haven't really, the whole experience of, like, going to doctors and there's a lot I need to do for this lawsuit, and I haven't been emotionally in a place to be able to do that well. So I've just kind of taken it one day, one moment at a time. So in this moment, when we were in the car on the way to the lab, or to the place to get the embryo transfer, I was on the freeway and got the call, got straight off the freeway, and I went straight to the beach. So we went to the beach, we prayed about it, and we talked about how it was the best day ever. So January 1st was the day that I had launched a public campaign, I'm living each day as the best day ever on social media. This happened on January 20th. So I realized that if I was going to be in a lawsuit, if I was going to tell try and say that I've experienced emotional pain and suffering for this, I couldn't be on social media every day talking about how today is the best day ever. And then as that marriage ended, and again, even though there was some space from the lawsuits, I didn't want to make my ex feel a certain kind of way about being on the internet every day saying today is the best day ever. So all of these personal events in my life have prevented me from being on the internet, from reigniting this way of life, this way of living. And I have come to an understanding that as I have this intention to restart this idea in January of 2024, that today is the time for me to start talking about it. So I'm grateful for this safe space to be able to do that and be reminded of the fact that my decision to live this experience isn't easy. There are times, there are days, there are moments that absolutely do not feel like the best day ever, but what made that day so incredible is that we responded to something like that with allowing it to be the best day ever. We went to the beach, we prayed together, we got in the car and drove some more to Santa Barbara and had a lovely day in Santa Barbara. And as I said, it was January 20th, so Joe Biden had just been inaugurated that day, and the city of Santa Barbara was just happy about that. The energy of being in a space and in a city where people were feeling joyful and excited around us. Well, while dealing with this experience of grief that we were going through, I felt held by the energy of the city, regardless of the fact that their excitement had nothing to do with me. So I'm grateful for that experience, and I continue to do what I can to remember that it's the best day ever and not allow experiences like that, experiences that break me down, to break me all the way down and to truly experience suffering. Dr. Sean Jim Wright wrote this book called The Four Pivots that the Centers for Spiritual Living is doing a book study on, specifically for practitioners and ministers that I'm participating in. And Dr. Sean Jim Wright is speaking at the CSL conference in February in Charleston. So I've been reading his book, and he says in the introduction, I think much of what we know about healing is incomplete. Sean Jim Wright wrote this book. I think the book came out, let's say post-2020. I don't know when it was specifically, but I'm noticing that we are having conversations about healing today that I have never seen exist in my life. I'm comfortable sharing the story with you that I shared with you earlier because I'm learning that this is what healing looks like. It is telling your story. It is facing and embracing the experiences of your life and looking for mining the light, as I like to say. In this book, Sean Jim Wright also says, as a society, we don't really do a good job at preparing, teaching, or training people how to be vulnerable, cultivate empathy, practice self-reflection, all the stuff that makes us human. I'm finding that in 2023, we're just starting to have these conversations about the power of vulnerability. That was one of the themes that cultivating empathy is something that we're in the process of figuring out. Like he said about the experience of feeling being incomplete. This is all something that I think we're learning together. And I think that the combination of a global pandemic and then a conversation about race, and now we're having a conversation about transgender rights and visibility, that all of this is laying the path, planting the seeds for creating a world that works for everyone. Planting the seeds of education around preparation, teaching and training people on vulnerability and cultivating empathy, practicing self-reflection. This is work we're just now starting to do collectively. And I feel like these seeds being planted are allowing for experiences of blessings of vulnerability to sprout in the world that we live in. So one of these people who I'm finding is really championing this cause that I've been quoting from all year since I got her book is Trisha Hersey from the NAP Ministry, who says, everything we know about rest is false. So that whole concept of getting comfortable with discomfort, when we are using the traditional idea of what rest is, it's this idea, like I'll use bereavement as an example. The way that our country is designed, the vast majority of companies that even provide any kind of bereavement policy, it's something like 3 days. So someone important in your life, your husband, your mother, sister, child, somebody in your life that you see day to day, suddenly not in your life day to day, and you got 3 days to plan a service and get back to work and move on as if nothing has happened. And we are really coming to understand that the experience of grief clearly does not end in 3 days, but it's an ongoing thing, and grief looks different for everyone. It's not these 5 stages of grief that we've been taught, that we move through those 5 stages, and there are more than those 5 that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross identified for us. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross herself has apologized for having created this narrative that grief is only these 5 stages, and you move through them, get to acceptance, and you're done. Recognizes that's not how it works, that sometimes we're experiencing acceptance, sometimes we're experiencing anger, sometimes we're experiencing great sadness, that there are multiple experiences, emotions that come along with grief that does not end when someone else says it should, or it's been this much time, you should have gotten over it by now. I mentioned, I think the last time that I was here, I was at a service, that I led a service for my cousin, and my cousin had been experiencing significant grief from the loss of his mother many years prior. And when he lost his mother, he didn't have the tools to process and heal that experience of grief, and was not able to continue in the life that he was living because he never received those tools and didn't know where to go. Especially as young Black men are not in institutions, or often not in spaces where they're provided with that. And he was constantly in jail, because that's what we do in this culture when someone is responding from grief and acting in a way that we consider inappropriate. When it's Black men in particular, they end up in jail real quick. I know so many stories of Black men breaking down in grief and emotion outside and being arrested for it, for loitering or coming up with some sort of thing, because the world that we live in says it's not okay for Black people to be emotional, Black men specifically to be emotional, and when they're doing something outside, they're thought of as dangerous. So as we are looking at how do we create a world that works for everyone, how do we create systems for self-reflection, for vulnerability, for creating empathy, it starts with the understanding that what we've been taught about rest is false. That self-care is not just bubble baths and getting your 8 hours of sleep and drinking 8 glasses of water a day. That the experience of rest is listening to your body, is slowing down, and is trusting your grief process, trusting your rest process. Trisha Hersey also said, because we are in a constant state of unraveling from the lies and socialization of grind culture, we must be intentional about reimagining what we believe rest is and can be for the rest of our lives. So in this experience of discomfort that I've gone through over the course of the week, what I've been doing is reimagining rest for myself. I've been giving myself permission to go slowly, to take my time, and let it be okay that things aren't turned in or aren't done at the time or in the way that somebody else thinks that it should be. I am comfortable with whatever consequences come along with it, knowing that prioritizing my rest and prioritizing self-care is what I need. And that when I live and operate from a place of faith, I trust and know that none of those consequences are negative, that are going to have a negative impact on my life. If one of the projects that I'm working on, if they decide that I'm not the right person because I prioritize rest such and such days, then that's not the place for me. But as I said when I started here, that all of the places that I'm in are places where I'm celebrated. So as a result of that, it's been easier for me to choose rest because I am in spaces where people recognize the importance of it, have grace for me, and support me, cheer me on, celebrate me for having that experience of grace. But that's something that was cultivated. As I said, when I started living from each day is the best day ever in 2015, we're having this conversation right now in 2023. I found community, I found the place, I didn't know I was looking for it, but I found the spaces where I could truly be myself in 2021 as a result of 6 years of lots of intense healing work and 6 years of leaning into gratitude. Napo and Medicine for the People, this is a band. I highly recommend you check out the music. There's this song called Manifesto, which I thought just came on one day while I was listening to music, and because I already quoted Trisha Hersey and her Resistance, Rest is Resistance, a Manifesto is the name of her book. This song is called Manifesto from Napo and the People. And he says, this is the medicine. There's a message within, and each one will find it in their own time. This concept of nurturing ourselves through discomfort is not going to look the same for everyone, and it's also not going to be the same every time. The way that I managed grief in that experience of January of 2021 when I discovered this embryo didn't exist is a very different process than when we were having this conversation about race and I was having these challenges with my family posting racist content. The way that I treated those scenarios were different measures of self-care. I used different resources for support systems. Specifically around race, what I did was I was a part of something that was literally called a support space that was designed for Black women in entertainment. Could not be any more specific in that area. I started seeing a therapist regularly. I started there ended up being a lot of Black spiritual new thought spaces that just happened to pop up. Not just happened to, the necessity of it emerged, and Black spiritual leaders in Chicago and Oakland and Texas stepped up to create these spaces. So I started, and even Pasadena. So I started participating in healing spaces around healing internalized racism. And that wasn't something that I could do for 1 year and never had to do again. That is an ongoing process. It is something that I'm consistently engaging in. It was a whole lot harder on day one than it is today as I'm 2-3 years into this healing journey. It looks a lot different today, but it didn't disappear. And that experience of healing internalized racism is something that we are all going through. That when we are born and raised in a culture where whiteness is considered normal and everything else is not, that is something that we all have to go through to really shift our perspective to see everyone as normal, not just heterosexual white people. That we are expanding this idea and understanding that what inclusion is recognizing that we're not just telling people they can't come, we're saying your voice is just as important as everyone else's. So in that, we're doing it, and I'm grateful for it. In this song, Manifesto, Napo also says, gather and create, be of service, be a sensible person, use your words and don't be nervous. You can do this, you've got purpose. of finding discomfort, finding comfort in discomfort comes with recognizing that every experience of discomfort is an invitation for a shift. For me, what it usually is needing to choose faith in a bigger way than I ever have before. I came to the Centers for Spiritual Living looking for a definition of faith. I didn't believe that an old white man in the sky was making all the decisions and he was the one I needed to pray to. I felt in my heart that there was another understanding of God, and I sought out community and found it here, not this location specifically, but found it within the Centers for Spiritual Living. And since I've been introduced to a new understanding of faith, one that resonates and connects with me, that my understanding of faith has gotten bigger over the years. And being a minister, it makes perfect sense that if my job is to stand up and encourage you all to choose faith, that I'm going to be challenged to choose faith in bigger and more significant ways within my own life. I need to be able to understand this so that I can remind you all that there is an energy for good in the universe and that it expresses itself as you. And that literally every challenge that you've experienced in your life is an invitation to dig deeper into faith. If you are facing a challenge that feels insurmountable, if you have no idea how you are going to accomplish this thing that you feel like you need to, whatever it may be, you may not feel like you need to, you may actually need to. You may actually need to find a place to live by a certain date. You may actually need this amount of money to do this thing. That as you're facing this experience of, I don't know what I'm going to do, I don't know how I'm going to fix this, that is always an invitation to trust and lean on the universe. I've been using this personal mantra since 2020 of this best day ever thing, but in 2020 that wasn't good enough. So what I was leading into was this concept of being present and trusting the universe. And that's how I ended up in Oklahoma. When I came here and I heard my spirit tell me to blow up my life and move here, I thought, well, I've been using this mantra, being present and trusting spirit. So I'm just going to be present with this experience and trust spirit to guide me. And that's exactly what happened. It is how I ended up as the assistant minister here, is I remained present and trusted spirit to guide me. Even down when I say that it's how I became the assistant minister. When I showed up in Oklahoma with an Airbnb that I had rented for 4 days, day 2, the day after the 4th of July, I felt my spirit tell me to call here. Revlin answered the phone and said, come on over, let's have a conversation. And when I was in the shower getting ready to come here, I heard my spirit say, volunteer to serve as the assistant minister there. And I got my letter of call by that Sunday. The core council approved me that Sunday, and I just kept trusting spirit, and it's what brought me here. So any challenge that you are going through, I invite you to recognize that there is a power for good in you that has not only created the experience that you are in, but also inviting you to choose faith in a bigger, deeper way than you ever have before. I genuinely believe that each one of us is on our own hero's journey. There's a reason that the formula that Joseph Campbell came up with of the hero's journey, it starts with the call to action, that we're living a mundane, regular life, we're in our comfort zones, and there's a call to action to step out of our comfort zones. And I've been talking to another minister who talked about how there's a cosmic sledgehammer that will smash our comfort zones to pieces if we don't hear that call to action, if we ignore it over and over again. So consistently, we have these cycles of our hero's journey. We are called to action to leave our comfort zones time and time again. And when we trust our intuition, stay present and trust it to guide us through the journey, there are challenges that we'll experience. The hero's journey does not start with a call to action and then experiencing the treasure. There's a whole journey involved of mentors and teachers, and there's always a leap of faith. It's a formula that you'll see in literally every movie, television show that you can ever watch. In the Bible, every significant story, and I feel like the purpose of those stories is to to remind us all that we are living our own hero's journey. So I want to close with a quote from my favorite, Mariah Carey, who says, "A hero lies in you." And I'm going to get this tattooed on my forearm. I needed that tattoo this week. So I want to remind you all that as you are experiencing, as you are navigating whatever discomfort you may be experiencing in your life, remember that you are on your own hero's journey, that a hero does lie within you, and that this experience is sparking, is inspiring a call to action, whether it is being present, trusting spirit, whatever it may be, something in you, your intuition already knows what needs to be done. And whatever that thing may be, might be really uncomfortable. But this week, we are being invited to find comfort in the discomfort and trust spirit to guide the journey. So let's note that together in prayer, shall we? I invite you to take a moment to get comfortable in your space, comfortable in your body, feeling the breath in your body, and remembering what a sacred experience breathing is. It is something that we all have in common. There's no living being that is not breathing. And that as we bring our conscious attention and awareness to the breath, we get to remember that the sacred nature of the breath is a perfect symbol of the sacred nature of life. That our lives were not designed for us to suffer. Every challenge in our lives is designed to remind us that there is a power for good in the universe, and we have the opportunity to choose to use it, to choose to trust it, to choose to allow it to guide us through any uncomfortable situation, knowing that that uncomfortable situation is a gift to allow for us to shift into wherever it is we are meant to go, whatever it is we're meant to experience, whoever it is we are meant to be. And I'm grateful that each one of us is joining together in prayer to recognize and remember that each one of us is a hero. We are the hero of our own lives. And wherever we are on our hero's journey is the perfect place. And each one of us has heard the perfect message and is receiving the perfect amount of inspiration to guide us along that next step, the next leg of our hero's journey. I am grateful for the sacred journey that we are all participating in together. I am grateful for all of the wisdom, inspiration, and knowledge that we are receiving to guide us along this journey. And I'm grateful for all of the ways that we inspire each other by recognizing the hero that lies within us and inspiring others to recognize that within themselves. So I'm so grateful for an opportunity to declare this for each one of us and myself, knowing and trusting that we are transforming ourselves and our communities as a result of participating in this experience, of being present, and trusting our own understanding of spirit every step of our hero's journey. And in this place of gratitude, I invite us all to affirm this truth and this word together by saying, and so it is.
So it is.